So tonight I'm going to talk about Microsoft Application Insights. Don't be surprised if you haven't heard about it. It's only really about a year old. And it first came out in Visual Studio Online, and now it's being migrated to Azure, but we'll get to that in a second. I just want you to think about for a second, before I begin, how you are notified that your company website or your personal website is broken. Most of the time, you get notified either from a client, or you're going to get notified from your support group, or you might get notified by just a passerby saying, hey, did you realize this is broken? And being developers, what's our first response? No, it's not. That's not. And then of course, we got to go see with our own eyes and see what's going on. And then we're kind of like, huh, it is broken. But in the meantime, a support ticket could be sitting there for several days, and we don't know about it until it comes to us, because support is trying to fix it, and then we got to try and fix it. So this is the thing that Microsoft Application Insights is going to give you. This is what it's trying to solve. So what is it exactly? It is basically a monitoring tool. And it's a monitoring tool that allows you to do a whole bunch of things and allows you to stay agile. So it'll allow you to detect issues faster. So you can do dashboards and alerts. You can get to the right problems. You can see exactly what's causing the problem on your website, or what's causing the problem on your Windows app or your Windows Phone app, and you can find it out immediately. Being part of the agile process, you can continuously improve your application. So you can start adding stuff to your backlogs. So you can see what your slowdowns are, where your bottlenecks are, and you can start adding those to your backlog. You can see what your users are actually doing, how they're coming in. You can see what browsers they're using, where they're coming from in the world, how long they're staying on each page. You can track any number of things that you want, and you can also log your own proprietary data as well. And then you can make this data, as it says, an integral part of your development cycles. So you can actually bring that in and start putting that as part of your sprint cycles. Right now, Application Insights is being used within Microsoft. So they're drinking their own Kool-Aid, and they are using it on OneDrive, Xbox, Dynamics, as well as many other services. So they're just not promoting it for the fun of it. They're actually using it, and they're actually using it to make sure that they can actually start delivering more items for their apps. As I said, it was launched in November of 2013, so approximately a year, about 4 months ago, as part of Visual Studio Online. How many people have used Visual Studio Online? So I gather the rest kind of know it's out there, but haven't really played with it. So for those of you who don't know what it is, it's kind of like a TFS online or TFS in the cloud. It kind of allows your disparate developers to kind of launch in and get to that code base. It's not actually Visual Studio Online. There's no IDE in the cloud per se. It's allowing you to get into and share code between teams.
Do you want to mention it's free for a certain number of developers?
Yes, yeah. I'm actually going to demo it. So it's free for 5 people, and you can have a couple of accounts, 5 users under an account. So you can hook up. You can create an open source project with 4 other people if you want, and actually use Visual Studio Online. Some of the stuff that Visual Studio Online is actually using as part of System Center Operations Manager. A lot of this stuff you might not really come across even within Visual Studio Online or Application Insights. The main thing you're going to notice is that this thing here, this Microsoft monitoring agent, that's going to be mentioned a lot within Application Insights, and that's what's actually driving the whole back-end channel. So that's what's driving the events and bringing them into your Application Insights repositories and into your dashboard. So if you hear about Microsoft Monitoring Agent, that's the reason. Everything is managed from within the cloud, either within Visual Studio Online or within the Azure portion of it. And I'll talk about what that means in a second. So there is no desktop client, there's no local storage, everything gets pushed to the cloud. And I'll talk about pricing as well as it comes up, but just to put your minds at ease, everything is free. So it's all free. But Microsoft has what would you say? They have like they want you to buy something eventually, yeah, but we'll talk about it. 2 versions. So right now, when it was launched in 2013, Visual Studio Online, this is the old version. There will be no new development on the old version, so just consider this. It's the 1X version of the Application Insights SDK. So if you go into Visual Studio 2013 and you see the SDK is installed and it's 1.37, 1.35 right now, that is the Visual Studio Online version. All of the functionality and all of the features are being added to the Microsoft Azure version. And the Azure version, you do need a subscription to Azure. The free trial does work, so you don't have to worry about that. And you will need to be running 2013 Update 3 or later with the 2x version of the SDK. And I'll show you how to find all those and what that means. You might be wondering, why would I even want to bother with the 2 versions? Well, right now, certain things exist in Visual Studio Online that do not exist in Azure. Keep in mind that everything is being migrated to Azure and will live in Azure eventually. But if you want to monitor a Windows Store app or a Windows Phone app, you have to live in Visual Studio Online. It is not there yet on the Azure side. The only thing that lives in Azure is ASP.NET website applications. So if you want to do a web service, if you want to monitor a Java application or use some JavaScript code, or you want to do something with Angular, everything's going to be in Visual Studio Online. You're going to live in Visual Studio Online. If you want to go into the Azure space, that's where you're going to start doing the ASP.NET web applications or any of your website kind of stuff. So you can kind of see the differences between the two and why you would want one or the other. And Microsoft always says, if you're in doubt, start using the one in Azure, because eventually it will live in Azure. But however, if you want to do a Windows Phone app or a Windows Store app, which I'm going to demonstrate in a second, you will have to be in Visual Studio Online. So you're going to have to play one off against the other and try to think about what's best for me now and what's best for me in the future. So I'm going to, that's pretty much my slides for the moment. I'm going to live in the demo, or I'm going to live in the code for the moment, for the rest of the talk until the break, because we're all coders and we like code. So yeah, is there any questions about any of that before I get into the Visual Studio Online stuff? Sure.
Would you expect some migration paths from Visual Studio Online to Azure for the projects that you might start? Let's say you do something on your phone, right? A Windows Phone application, and they move that to Azure. Does Microsoft will they provide a migration path for your stuff?
I don't know. I don't think so. A lot of the stuff that you can do within Visual Studio Online. Sorry, I'm just going to. Everything you can do on Visual Studio Online is pretty much native to the online experience. That being said, to replicate like a web test in Azure within it's 5 seconds. You just there's much more sensibility within the Azure. So I don't even know how those would add up or match up anymore. So I'll show you what I mean in a second here. So what am I trying to do? So this is Visual Studio Online. For those of you who haven't seen it before, visualstudio.com is the address. Oops, that's not what I want this guy. Visualstudio.com is the address, and you can see that up there. You can see here, as Carl and I were talking about, that you get five free users with your free account. So you can run an open source project if you wish with 5 other people, unlimited stakeholders, get all kinds of stuff. Probably the biggest thing you want to pay attention to is the 60 minutes of build time a month. So you don't want to go over that. I don't even know what happens if you go over that. I don't know if they can start charging you. I'm not sure if they just close down your account. I haven't really played around with that. So just think about that if you're grinding through a lot of changes. You want to make sure that you're taking care of that. And some of the other stuff you can see here as well. So you can see all the free versions. So it's just visualstudio.com/pricing. It basically will get you there. If I try to, I'm just going to do a quick sample here. I just want to show you what this actually looks like. I'm going to just do a junk account. This guy. I just want to show you a couple of things just so that, so you can see I've got a junk account here. You can see that I've got my existing account. What I want to do is I want to just create a free account here. If I try to use an existing account, you can only have one name per account. Or sorry, it has to be unique. So if I do this, you can see there that it, again, the account name is in use. So you can only use that name once. So I could do this if I wanted to, I guess, and then that would make it work. So just keep that in mind. You can't have multiple accounts under the same name. So if you create an account, which I'm not going to do, it'll take you through a wizard. It takes about 5 seconds. You'll have your Visual Studio account up and running. I'm going to go and jump to my actual account. So you can see right here, this is my Visual Studio Online account. There's my name, and there's my actual account. This is my actual Visual Studio account. If I could draw. All right, so I'm going to go in, and I want to show you what this actually looks like. Visual Studio Online, this is what you get. You get, it looks like your regular native Metro app dashboard kind of look. But what you want to do is when you come in, you want to actually have a look at this. This is where you're going to find your Try Application Insights. It's this little box just off to the side here, and this is where you're going to actually run your application insights within Visual Studio. So, let's create something that we can actually use within Visual Studio.